Hello, and welcome to Stories Across Borders. Here we discuss stories told across a range of different media, books, movies, games, you name it. The only rule is that we can only talk about things in terms of the writing. Anything like acting, animation, or mechanics is out unless it relates directly to how the story is being told. I'm Daniel Radford, author, weirdly aggressive Therizinosaurus, and also your host. And as I so often am, I am once more joined by my regular co-host, John Kernan, as we continue our cycle on sequels and spin-offs.
Hi, I hope you're all raptor with attention. It was a bumpy road to get
All
here.
right, that's the end of the episode. It was thanks for coming, guys. Uh, should also say introduced by the chorus. Again, the crickets returneth. I don't know if you can hear them. Hopefully you can't. But if you can, we're sorry. They have invaded my house like a plague, and I cannot get rid of them.
God has smote him again.
Anyway, bouncing off of that absolutely fucking awful pun, just the worst. We're embarking on a journey into one of my favorite franchises today, the Jurassic Park slash Jurassic World franchise. Although
Unfortunately, yeah,
we won't be touching on the original movie, which is the best of them and my favorite, because it's not a sequel, and we're still doing sequels.
I don't know if there's ever been such no, I think there has only ever been exactly one other long-running series where there's this many movies and very, very obviously one stand out above all the others, and that's Terminator.
Weirdly, though, Terminator 2 is the really standout one.
It is, yeah. First one is still good, but like, e pretty much everybody universally agrees Terminator 2 is the best Terminator.
But we're not here to talk about robots because, blessedly, they haven't really added. Actually, I can't
Yeah, well,
say
I'm here
that
to talk
because
about
they
animatronics.
absolutely have added robots to the Jurassic Park franchise. Maybe you just haven't got to that bit yet. Anyway,
Oh no, I
so
didn't remember the robots.
you'll see them later, possibly. But yes, we're not covering the original, obviously, because it doesn't actually fit the theme. But we will be touching upon The Lost World, which is Jurassic Park 2, Jurassic Park 3, the Jurassic World movies, as well as the animated Camp Cretaceous spin-off, and possibly even the games, of which there are many. We'll see. It's a funny place to begin, right? Because I picked this one not just because I love the franchise, and this was a good excuse as any just to talk about it, but because out of every media franchise there is, I cannot think of one that better exemplifies the theme and at its best and its worst than the Jurassic Park franchise.
That's true because, like, you know, they, the second trilogy pretty much just exists to be legacy sequels. Like, I'm not saying this to dunk on the trilogy, even though I have plenty of things I would say to dunk on the trilogy, or at least most of it. But these are very clearly this is very clearly a trilogy that was just started because someone was like sitting in a boardroom going, people still like dinosaurs, right? And everyone was like, yeah, everyone likes dinosaurs. And so they were like, Jurassic Park made a lot of money, right? And everyone's like, yeah, that's tons of money. That was great. We love Jurassic Park. And they're like, we should make more of those.
Yeah, it's a bizarre, not bizarre, but it is a strange one. It started out as a book by Michael Crichton. It's a fantastic book. If you didn't know it started as a book, recommend reading it. And then there's a sequel to that, which is The Lost World, which is weird. I'm actually just checking something. I want to know if I forgot to check this out when I was doing my notes, but I want to know if the Jurassic Park Lost World came out before the book.
Good question.
So the book, okay, yeah. So I'm going to get into why that's weird because the book did in fact predate the movie. So there's that, but then of course that spawns a movie, and that movie has its own version of The Lost World, which is its sequel, and then there's Jurassic Park 3, which follows that, and that is a set of direct sequels. However, many years later, that boardroom meeting you talked about happened, and suddenly Jurassic World is born. And Jurassic World is a legacy sequel. Barely features the old cast, and they're not in a main role, but it is still part of that timeline, and still everything that happened in the originals is still relevant.
And I think Jurassic World is built on the same Ila as
Isla Sorna, yeah.
the
No,
first
Nubla. Nubla? It's one
Nublar,
of them.
I think.
I think it's Nubla, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is literally built on the grounds of the original Jurassic Park. And it itself then has 2 sequels. And set during the time of the first movie of Jurassic World, we get a spin-off in Camp Cretaceous, which happens during the first movie and also after. And then it has its own sequel called Chaos Theory, which I have not really seen yet, which is also arguably a spin-off / prequel to parts of the second Jurassic World movie. And then there's the new Jurassic World movie with, I think, Scarlett Johansson set to come out at some point like this year, which is either a soft reboot or another legacy sequel. I'm unclear exactly what's going on there. And
Real
throughout
curious where that's going to go.
Yeah, and throughout all of this, there's also a number of various video games that are set at various parts of this timeline, which are also all spin-offs. I think it's a Telltale game, it might be. It has that kind of vibe that I played years ago, which follows a different group. Yeah, it follows a different group of characters during the events of the first movie. Very strange web of direct sequels, legacy sequels, and spin-offs all kind of mashed together into this bizarre cinematic universe format. And it's interesting because it has its hits and misses on all fronts, right? Even the books, because in the very first Jurassic Park book, Ian Malcolm straight up dies.
Oh.
That chase scene thing with the T-Rex and all that happens, he succumbs to his wounds.
Oh,
and then the reason I bring this up, and I brought this up earlier about the timeline of the actual release of the book and the movie, is I was like, okay, did the Lost World book come out after the Lost World movie, which has him as the main character? But no, the book, Michael Crichton, for some reason, just decided he didn't die, actually. And I believe it's never explained how he mysteriously survived, despite being very clearly dead. Yeah. I actually, as much as I love that first book, I cannot read the second one. I cannot read the Lost World book because it breaks its own continuity so badly. I couldn't get past like the first chapter.
That's the worst continuity.
He doesn't explain anything. It opens with him like hosting a conference, and he straight up just says rumors of my death are exaggerated. That old quote. I'm like, no, that's not enough. You are like chopped on by a T-Rex. You had no heartbeat, no breathing. You were dead. They left without you. How were you alive?
Yeah, within 2 minutes, some little scavengers or compies would have found you and finished you off if you were sitting there still barely alive and somehow they were wrong. Like, you don't get up from that alive.
So, as it turns out, this wasn't a cash grab because the movie existed. Interestingly enough, this is a rare example of the movie fixing something the book did wrong because Nelson survived. Which the writers must have known because it also came out on the book. So,
I see that every day.
Michael Crichton with the cash grabber this time.
So by keeping him alive of the first movie, him being the main character of the Lost World in the second movie actually makes sense and doesn't break their continuity or anything like that, which is really interesting just from like a meta standpoint.
Makes you wonder if he got a bunch of other stuff set up first and then was sitting there staring at it being like, no, it's too early. Grant and Lex wouldn't be coming back yet. But,
she's scared. She's scared of
oh, no, it just makes the cameo later. But,
yeah, the kids have a cameo in.
yeah, I didn't
We
Not
found
a
it?
really
No,
good book
it
to
found
use
us.
that name. Say that.
I know another one. What about that novelization of
Right, and it didn't really become the second book, which I can't really I couldn't get past the intro because of that weird retcon. But the second Jurassic movie, The Lost World, isn't a bad movie.
No, it's fine.
It's still quite good.
I had a lot of fun.
And it is still telling a story, It's showing us, yeah, the whole theme park was exactly what it appeared. None of the science was really being done there. It was all for show. Here's where the science really happened, and everything's gotten out, and it's basically wild dinosaur islands now. And it becomes a question of, do we preserve them? Do we don't? Do we not, I should say? Do we look into... We can use this to study them, alive dinosaurs. It becomes a lot of very interesting questions baked into that idea. And then Jurassic Park 3 happens. Anyway,
Jurassic Park 3 sure does happen, doesn't it?
we're back with Grant, who for some reason didn't end up staying long term with Ellie because he didn't want kids, I guess. Even though
Yeah,
his
things
entire
just...
character arc in the first movie was that he learned that he did actually like kids.
Yep, the things just didn't work out with them for some reason, even though the very next time they're on screen together, it's going to be so that she can be like, I broke up with my husband, and then they kiss.
I don't remember that at all.
By the end of the bad one, they kiss.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, it's the first time, right, where the movie doesn't have anything to say.
No, it really doesn't.
It's just like the dinosaurs exist, they're a plot device. Go help this marriage that's falling apart and
I
save
would
some
almost
lives
say
and get over your PTSD, question mark.
I would almost say the strongest thing about Jurassic Park 3 is that it puts into context how much people really did get invested in and care about the philosophical ideas and their serious thoughts of the first two movies, because it's pretty, for the most part, it's as good at doing the dumb fun action and having you watch your dinosaur things. For the most part, it's got more of that than the other movies.
That's arguably the
And
problem.
people are disappointed by it, yeah, just because they miss the serious and philosophical stuff. They like we like having our deep conversations mixed in with our dinosaur action. Thank you very much.
That's touching on something I actually do want to talk about that I actually talked about at length back in season 1 in the horror cycle. I think actually this is a good point to segue into, even though we haven't really summarized anything about the Jurassic World movies, because Jurassic Park 3 is where it actually starts. And then the Jurassic World franchise, as far as I can tell, I've not gotten all the way through that yet, is a continuation of the problem. Although, I'm not going to lie, I do think Jurassic World's a better movie than Jurassic Park 3.
I think it's a better movie. Not by like a huge jump, but it's got some more thoughtfulness and some more substance going on.
I thought about this, and I think this is actually a really relevant example because we are talking about a horror franchise and sequels specifically, right? So, way back when we did the horror cycle, I know you weren't here for that one, but we talked about how over time a horror franchise slides down the pipeline to eventually become spectacle action, right?
Inevitably, yeah.
And it is an inevitability the longer that franchise goes on. Because the thing is that in the first 1, 2, maybe even 3 movies, the monster, the killer, the whatever, is still more or less... It starts as an unknown factor. And it's scary because it's dangerous and unknown. And then it slides to, okay, it's more of a known quantity now, but now it's scary because we know what it can do, but maybe not as scary as before. And over time that slides to, I have become so familiar with this thing, with this evil, this monster, the slasher, whatever, and its capabilities and what it does and how it functions, that I know what's coming, I know what to expect, I know how these guys are going to die, more or less. I know how they could avoid it if they weren't horror movie stupid. And it becomes spectacle of all the different gruesome ways these people can die, or it becomes about fighting the monster because at this point we as an audience have had ideas about how to do that or whatever.
Yeah, the only one I can think of that made a comeback from that for a little while was Halloween, and that's because they said, well, what if we focused on how the protagonist is different instead of how the villain is the same?
Yeah, which that was an interesting idea. And there is some interesting playing with this in parts of Jurassic Park as well, but I would say Jurassic Park does follow that very typical timeline. For those of you listening who maybe aren't familiar with the original stories and only know the New World movies,
I'm sorry.
hello, young people.
Yeah, hello, young people. First of all, I'm sorry.
Go back and watch those at some point. The first two
At
are
least
really
the
good.
first one. Like, if you only make time for one, you have to watch the first Jurassic Park. It's like a near perfect movie.
It is literally my favorite movie ever.
It's a 10 out of 10. What can I say?
But for those of you who are unfamiliar for whatever reason, it's a horror movie. Like a true, genuine horror movie. Not an action movie with some tense, slightly scary moments.
They don't present any possibility of fighting or consistently running away from the dinosaurs. You just need to not get caught.
It is objective survive, yeah. It is a tense, suspenseful, dark, like literally dark. Most of the movie happens at night. Horror movie. The dinosaurs are a force of nature that has broken out and can no longer be controlled, and the humans are at their mercy. Every time they think they find a way to fight back, they lose, basically, and are just scrambling to continue surviving.
You know what's funny? Two of the moments I find scariest in it are also kind of funny comedic moments, and that's when the bathroom gets destroyed around the guy and he just gets plugged while he was trying to go. It's like, that's an obvious comedy moment, but I'm like, that's actually one of the most terrifying ways I can think of to die. It's just have the entire building collapse around you and then get eaten. But also, when she's wandering through the area and then the arm falls on her shoulder, it's just like, oh, doctor, thank God, and then turns and pulls the arm out with her because it's not attached to anything anymore. And you're like, oh man, they did him off screen? Shit.
I think, like, as far as the original movie goes, the peak horror cinema, peak Jurassic Park, when it's absolutely at its best, is when the T-Rex first comes out of its pen.
Ooh.
And they're all, like, frozen in terror in the cars. You know, there's the build-up of the thud, the water ripples, and then you see it emerge for the first time in profile next to the cars. You see how big it is, how helpless these guys are in these electric like cars on a track that can't move. And then later down the line, the kitchen.
Yes.
Where the Lex and Tim, the mandatory children in a Jurassic Park movie are alone whilst the adults are all doing various things to try and salvage the situation. They have been left in the kitchen part of the resort, and the raptors show up. And that's already terrifying, being two vulnerable children surrounded by apex predators. But they lock themselves, they close the door and in the kitchen, and they're like, and then the raptors open the door, and they slip in, and they're now in a confined space, unable, trying to maneuver around very intelligent lizard wolf.
Don't see that every day or ever.
And it is so good. I think the raptors in the long grass.
If we get this DNA, millions of lives are saved.
when you just see guys getting pulled down
Maybe
beneath
we
like
should
that
make
long
this
grass.
quick, huh?
And the occasional tail like.
Time to
But
move.
that's where it starts. It's a genuine,
We put
tense,
ourselves in a
suspenseful
place where we
horror
don't
movie.
belong.
And then
Survival is a long shot.
even
That's kind of our
2 and
specialty.
3, which still have
She's
they
scared.
begin that slide,
She's scared
become
of.
progressively more action oriented, set oriented. They still have genuine horror. Less so in 3, definitely. And then by the time you finish 3 and into Jurassic World, it's fully completed that pipeline of being action.
There was a
sprinkling
source.
intense
We
horror
found it?
moments,
No,
but
it
mostly
found
it's
us.
action. During the day, where a lot of that is no longer the ambience of it being night is gone.
Yeah, it is scary. How much the action took over. Although in a way that is also inevitable because horror is inversely proportional to exposure
Yeah,
after a while.
exactly.
So it always had to become more action oriented. But like I think part of that isn't just that it would have always become less scary, but because they come from a similar place of like, that is the stuff that's scary about dinosaurs. And I guess why dinosaurs were always a smart thing to base a franchise like this off of is because that is the thing about dinosaurs is they're equally scary and cool. And if it had been pulled off better, once the scary is gone, you're just left over with the cool.
I mean, you get plenty of the cool in Jurassic World, right? And it does do some interesting stuff, like retroactively justifying why some of them are so is like scientifically inaccurate. Wu's speech about you didn't ask for realistic, you asked for more teeth. Like, I liked that it did that, and like
Yeah, it lines up
justified
really
some of
well
it.
with all the in-gen and the financially corrupt, no, get us money stuff.
And the scenes with the dinosaurs, even even their fan OC dinosaur, were cool, but
Fucking Indominus
it
Rex.
lost the horror for the most part in favor of crazy dinosaur action and Chris Pratt on a motorcycle.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see Chris Pratt on a motorcycle with velociraptors.
A lot of very cool fan service that rings hollow because it lacks a lot of the horror, and it stopped having anything to say.
Yeah. It really, really ran out of like anything to say at all. Well, hey, the third one says the black market is bad. Trade of endangered species is bad. It does that by putting dinosaurs in a couple cages.
That's the second one.
Is it?
Yeah, you're thinking of the hunters, and the guy who's like his life's goal has basically become to hunt a male T-Rex, which he calls a buck, and I'm like, I don't think a male T-Rex should be a buck. Come on.
Well, considering they're literally not the kind of creature that could buck to begin with.
Hilariously, actually, I think it should probably, seeing what its most direct descendants are, it should probably be called a cock.
Yeah, either.
Make of that what you will.
I mean, they're kind of chicken-shaped anyways.
But, like, you look at the first Jurassic Park movie, and the first book as well, because, again, it's a really good book, and it's making all the same points. It is asking the question of, I mean, Malcolm says it best, right? You were so preoccupied with whether or not you could, you didn't stop to ask yourselves if you should. And that is the entire premise, the entire theme of the first book, the first movie. It's this idea that we can create something incredible. We can bring back this ancient species, and it's awesome. It's cool as fuck, right? But they never think of the implications of what that could mean, because these are creatures that all we know is they're big and strong.
And also that the world is not made for them anymore.
Yeah. There is an element of we don't know enough about them to be doing this. We don't know how the world will interact with them, how they will interact with the world. And our meddling counteracts our own safeguards. So they start breeding. It's a very poignant movie when you think about it in those terms, asking this idea of, can science go too far? Where should we draw the line? Are we
Yeah.
asking the right questions about all these incredible things we're doing?
I do love that we come to the reveal on that too, because that essentially just feels like a almost a clerical error with what a small step it was along the process, because they had to do so much gene splicing to make this work. And it's like, oh man, well, that was horrible. But at least they can't keep making more. That'll be cool, right? Wait, are those eggs? What the fuck? I thought eggs. How is and then just like, oh yeah, somewhere along the line, someone spliced in the DNA of a frog that can dynamically change sex when it has to, so that it can asexually reproduce. And like, oh, cool. Who did that? Like, I don't
They're
know. It
getting
was
fired if they're still alive.
just like, I don't know. It was one of 8 million steps in the process. It was probably someone who came in on a Saturday they were supposed to have off and didn't have his coffee in the morning.
Right. And, that's something interesting to say. And of course, at the same time, there is genuinely there's some very real character development for Grant, who is our main central character, as he is starting to come into come to terms with that, like, he can be a caretaker and protector and things like that. And then we have the second movie, which still has something to say. It has commentary about, the black market trade and hunting and things like that. It also asks questions about the world that the first has created. This idea of, okay, the dinosaurs are out now, to quote Sadler. They've got the run of this other island. We have accidentally created an ecosystem. And now it comes the question of, do we have a right to this artificial ecosystem we've created, to these creatures that are now living independent? Should we destroy it? What does it mean if we do? Where do they exist in the natural order now? It's a lot of very interesting questions. And it also gives Malcolm a chance to get over some of his stuff. And then 3, it's just a rescue mission. And like, you can argue that like Grant has to get over his fear and things like that, and his own issues with things like that. And it's funny, they touched on something that could have been very interesting to explore, this idea of, where does paleontology fit into the world now that actual dinosaurs exist on an island again?
Indiana Jones adventures, obviously.
And, exploring, like, are they really dinosaurs after we've meddled with the DNA and things like that? But instead, it's just a generic rescue movie with some dinosaur action. And a kid who feels like a poor replacement for Tim.
Yeah, they wanted a new kid character, and we needed an excuse for Alan to go back to the island. So find somebody who's going to pay him and lie to him.
And yeah, it just stopped having anything to say, really. And then we have the same thing with Jurassic World. You can argue there's some commentary about repeating the mistakes of the past. I will give Jurassic World that. It does have a little to say.
Yeah, they literally went back to the same island that had been given up on because it had become an ecosystem for dinosaurs, and said, no.
No, this is the original island.
Sauna
is the one. No idea what happened with Sauna between Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic World, actually.
You know what I think would have been really smart is if they had started doing less genetic experimentation and just take dinosaurs from that one. Just take them one at a time. But yeah, no, they're like, there's literally InGen and whatever other corporations being like, no. There's still money to be made here. Who cares what happened before? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, so it is mostly a popcorn action movie, but fair credit to it, I will say that it did have a little to say about that idea of repeating past mistakes. And then 2 is weird because it has very little to say, but like hints at some ideas on commentary on like cloning and stuff. And then I don't know enough about 3. I think it's retreading the ground.
2 has some really strong little moments that go nowhere. And then 3 is just an awful jumbled mess where we spend a period of time looking at giant genetically modified locusts going around eating people's crops, and then go, weird. These giant locusts are only eating the crops of the people who didn't buy the special pest protection that InGen makes or whatever. Isn't that a weird coincidence? have this guy in it who's like, he's either the worst actor or
Maybe
a
only the
character
worst ones
written
here.
to look like the worst actor I've ever seen, because he doesn't emo like at all.
And yeah, that's the punchline the movie twist in the book. But it's interesting that I've like because enter some things, which is by far the most violent Jurassic Park movie. It is an animated
Don't see that
series,
every day.
very much
Or
aimed
ever.
primarily, but it is
Let's go.
also the only example I can think of.
If we get
of
this DNA,
this franchise outside of the
millions of
game,
lives are
to an
saved.
extent, I suppose, to be fair. But it's the only like
Maybe we should
screen
make this
media,
quick,
like
huh?
film, TV, that subverts the
Time to
pilot.
move.
Because instead of going,
We
okay,
put ourselves
let's
in a place where we don't
focus on the
belong.
action. 'Cause it has some action. It
Survival
has
is a
action
long
set
shot.
pieces and things
That's
like that.
kind of our
It
specialty.
goes, what can we do with the
She's
dinosaurs
scared.
being loose? We can
She's
follow some
scared,
different
though.
people, bring you back to the first movie, and see how what happens when they get left off, when these kids get left on the island and survive on their own. And that brings back the horror element. Obviously, down because it's primarily kids. But it brings back the horror.
source. We
Because
found it?
these are
No,
kids.
it
They are
found us.
vulnerable. Have a lot of issues who are not very good at dealing with pressure, who don't have the knowledge that characters like Malcolm or Grant had, or that the character had, or whatever. One of them is a dinosaur, and the only thing keeping them alive for the first several episodes of that show is that he has done his research because he's done like that. And even then, it's by the skin of their teeth. So that brings that horror element back, but also by focusing it on a larger core group of characters over time, and by making them young characters with so much room for growth, they've gone, let's make it a drama. And it becomes about not only the horror of these vulnerable individuals in this dangerous situation with no sign of any help coming, but it also becomes about how being in that situation affects the dynamics of the group, how they interact with each other, how they interact with the world, how they feel about the world and themselves over time, just how they grow and change because of it. And that's interesting. That's something that's ground that hasn't really been tread in the franchise before.
Yeah, it's a good addition to the formula, because there's been drama in the movies, but the drama's never been important, and half the time it also hasn't been good. So, it's a nice addition.
Yeah, it's the only time in the entirety of Jurassic Park, really, that you just get to sit with a group of characters and see long term how being in this environment affects them. The things they learn about dealing with the dinosaurs, about themselves and each other, the tension and stress, and how it wears them down over time, and how it forces them to grow up and, in some cases, deal with a lot more than they are, if at all, ready to deal with, you know?
Yeah, it's really sad that we have so much better portrayal of running away from dinosaurs with these kids in this 3D animated kids show than in the third Jurassic World movie I keep forgetting the name of, when we have...
Dominion, I think?
Yeah, Dominion. When we have all of the main characters there have ever been who've ever mattered in this franchise all together in one, and the big, stupid, scary Giganotosaurus or whatever kind of like slowly noses at them and kills nothing the whole movie besides eating one locust that's already on fire and about to die anyways. And they just kind of lightly jog away from it while it stomps after them, being like, oh no, we're so scared, we're running. And I'm like, that's not running even. What is happening?
It is kind of funny, just as a side note, right? They set the bar so high in the first movie with like the T-Rex as this. They're like, okay, they do it. What do we do now? 2 T-Rexes in the second movie. 3 comes out like, okay, we can't do that again. We need a dinosaur that's bigger than a T-Rex. Got it. Spinosaurus. We know it was a predator. It was larger than a T-Rex. Never considered that it would still get the shit kicked out of it by a T-Rex.
And then after that we get like, okay, let's make a genetically modified super dinosaur that's better than a T-Rex. Okay, cool. It's doing all this crazy stuff. All right, and now let's have the classic T-Rex team up with some other stuff to fight it. The T-Rex just keeps coming back, man.
Yeah. And then they're like, okay, we'll do it again with a raptor. So now it's a bit smaller, but even more intelligent and sneaky. And then, they're like, okay, maybe the hybrids and OCs, because they just, that's what they feel like. They feel like bad fan characters.
They are.
That was a little too much. It's okay. We've still got 2 more dinosaurs that were predators bigger than T-Rex. Do we want Carcharodontosaurus or Giganotosaurus? The second one's easy to say. We'll do that one.
Yeah, and then you look at it and it's like, oh, actually the science is dubious. It's not, and also science is dubious about if it was even actually bigger than the T-Rex or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man. But it has Gigan in its name, so it must be the big boy.
At the very least, it was of comparable size.
And then let's just deflate it at the end by having the giant sea monster dinosaur get it instead, which
was not
by
that
the
big,
way.
By the way.
That not that big, and also, wow, props to whoever designed that one. It's like, yeah, we're trying to make dinosaurs that people can see and that we can control. So let's make a giant one that can live in the ocean, the part of the planet where we have the least power and we have no control over plenty of much smaller, weaker creatures that already live there. Let's just make a dinosaur that can flip
also,
boats over with its mouth.
Just saying, it's not a dinosaur.
This is Jurassic Park, sir. They're all dinosaurs, especially the fish.
It's not a fish, god damn it.
Fine. Fishosaur, does that make you feel...
Technically, they're just called marine reptiles, weirdly enough. I guess that, like, you can't go with Fishosaur because Ichthyosaur exists. It's a marine reptile.
The ichthyosaur does exist, this is true. But I mean, also, these things are, like, scientifically inaccurate, designed to be more lizard-like anyways. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they kind of are. But, no, it's not the point. It's just whoever designed that is really stupid. Like, that was literally always going to escape, and unlike all the other dinosaurs that can escape, I can't think of a good plan for anybody to deal with that thing once all the chaos is over.
Yeah, you've just got to hope it's the only one who doesn't figure out how to, like, reproduce asexually or something, which is always a risk with these things. And then
I really hope that's not one
dies.
of the dinosaurs that can make babies by itself. That sure would be awful, wouldn't it?
I mean, they weren't making, to be fair, they weren't reproducing asexually. They were changing their sex and then reproducing sexually. But yeah, this franchise is such an interesting case study in the idea of spin-offs and sequels, because it highlights so much of the good and the bad. We said this back in the first episode in the cycle, right? That the number one question you should ask when you're considering writing a sequel or a spin-off is there more story to tell here, or did I tell a completed story the first time?
You could almost say you need to stop and wonder if just because you can means you should.
Oh, God. So, honestly, though, so true.
No, isn't it funny, the thematic through line of, like, we have that line, and it's such a big deal, and you can literally look back at the second trilogy and be like,
But, I mean, it's very strange, though, right? Because, on the one hand, we've got, Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic World 2 and 3 especially, but that trilogy in general. And it's like, they stopped having much to say. The characters stopped being dynamic and growing. All the main characters at the start of those movies are the same, exactly the same as they were at the end, except maybe arguably the married couple from Jurassic Park 3, I guess. And they don't present any new ideas or anything like that. But then we look at Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World, and it's like, wow, actually, I would have thought that Jurassic Park was a completed story, that there was nothing else you could say here, but you found something interesting to talk about.
Yeah, it's a good continuation.
I mean, you had to give us a whole other island full of dinosaurs to make it happen, sure, but the idea of now that we've created it and changed the ecosystem, how much right do we have to the shape it takes? Should we try and revert it back? Can we revert it back? All these questions. I was like, shit, alright. And also there's commentary about, like, game hunting and things sprinkled in there. Okay, fair enough. I salute you. I guess Brighton had the idea originally. Don't know how much the book and movie diverged because, Malcolm's situation. But fair.
Yeah.
The theme park owners did
You could argue
work.
again that Jurassic World did have a little bit of commentary about repeating past mistakes and things like that. I'll give it that. It wasn't a lot of that, but it was there. And there is good there, even if there are these weird, unnecessary to say something.
Yeah, like we have the commitment to greed. I think the corporate greed. It was a focus in all of them, but I think
Don't see that every day.
actually partially the focus in World, whereas
Let's
it
go.
wasn't in the others. The others always had at least one corporate mouthpiece
If we get
being
this
like,
DNA,
okay, but
we
this
don't
all
use the
has to keep
glyphosate.
making money. But whereas World is like,
Maybe we should
yeah, but
make
those
this
guys
quick,
that
huh?
kept saying it has to keep making money, they made money and they ran with it, and they've been the ones in charge and in power for the last while. There are no more creative or scientific geniuses at the helm of
kind of
this
our
anymore.
specialty.
It is the corporate
She's scared.
dreamscape that they
She's
were going
scared.
after.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I think the right amount of things like that is a through line there. I mean, even the execution wasn't there a lot. So that's what happens if you focus too much on the action. It's very hard to do a story.
Then was a
Yeah, 'cause
source.
pretty much
We
everything
found
I
it?
said is
No,
something
it
about the
found
vibe
us.
or in the background. It's a thematic focus, not a narrative focus.
But by the same token, right, if we didn't have the Jurassic world, we would not have our that spun off of that. And weirdly enough, if we didn't have that, and also Golden Kingdom, I think it's the second Jurassic World movie, we wouldn't have Camp Cretaceous' sequel, Chaos Theory, because that ties into both of those things. It's very strange that in and amongst all these like popcorn sequels, there is all these nuggets of brilliance that wouldn't exist without those other sequels. It leaves a very strange feeling to think about it like that. This idea that that people are finding more to say that in this concept that hasn't been said necessarily, but there's also all this other stuff in there that just feels so like bloat. It's unnecessary. It adds nothing to the mythos and would arguably hurts it more. And it's going to be very strange to see like where the new one that's coming out later this year fits into that landscape. I've heard it described as a soft reboot. I don't know if that's true because I don't understand. It doesn't seem like it's retelling the story from the beginning or anything like that. It does seem like it's kind of its own spun-off thing. We don't know where it fits in the timeline really. We don't know what the plot is going to be. So it's going to be interesting to see where the new one that is separated again by another degree out from the Jurassic World trilogy, where that fits into things.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with that. And on the Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory thing, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. They have a pretty good spin-off show because they were already ripping off How to Train Your Dragon before that. I couldn't let it go without saying I can't get over the fucking hand thing Mr. Chris Pratt Owen does with the raptors and how it's the exact thing that he does with Toothless and How to Train Your Dragon, except, you know, the first movie, it has its decent basis because these are the raptors he's trained since they were babies, and they also show that he still doesn't have complete control over them. But the part where I call it ripping off How to Train Your Dragon is he does it with other dinosaurs later that he didn't train and has no connection to, and are bigger and scarier and meaner, and it just works, and then the little kid does it and it works, and I'm like, okay, so we're literally actually directly ripping off How to Train Your Dragon here, and how Toothless taught other people to do that, or Toothless, how Hiccup taught other people to do the magical hand trick that dragons like.
It's weird, right? Like, I mean, I don't know enough about How to Train Your Dragon moves to comment there, but with the dinosaur thing, it makes no sense for that to work with like the bigger dinosaurs or things like that. The reason it makes a degree of sense for the raptors is because you're showing them that you are aware of their presence as you like slowly back the fuck away. He's not controlling them. He's keeping them at bay so he doesn't get jumped from the side.
And also, even then, like, it barely works, and those are babies. He trained, or
Yeah.
those are young ones he trained since they were babies.
Because they're ambush predators, right? So he is
They don't
showing
like
them,
attacking from the front.
yeah, he's showing them, I know you're there, you don't have an opening. But they're obviously smart enough to work out they're stronger, they're faster, and that they can have an opening if they want one. So he's got to get out before that happens. But like, so I get the theory, I get what they're going for there. It doesn't look that stupid, really. It's been memed to death. It's not that dumb. There's way
No.
dumber things in that movie.
It's stupid when it's the other dinosaurs. It's not that stupid
Yeah.
with the raptors.
But like, I think they try it with, do they try it with like the T-Rex or Indominus or something? And it's like, that's not an ambush predator, my guy. That is, I will run you down before you have it. Like, it might sneak up a bit, but it's not a stealthy ambush predator. It's a massive thing that uses a quick burst of speed, yes, but also just brute force. It doesn't give a shit if you see it. It just has to catch you.
And it has no connection to him whatsoever, and he's smaller than it. He is the same size as the raptors.
Maybe it's because he's not moving, and their visual acuity is based on movement. Which, for the record, no.
Not true. Not even close. In fact, we have reason to believe that their vision's pretty dang good.
Extremely good. They had massive eyes.
Oh, man.
And we modeled what their brains were like shape-wise and things like that. I don't even think there's any predators really alive today that function that way. There's definitely some that react to movement more than if you're still, but that's because if you run, you're signaling that you're prey.
God, you know, one of the only, like, kind of clever things Dominion actually did is when they cut back to Grant before he becomes part of the story, and he's sitting there doing one of his paleontology, like, studies, and there's a couple teenagers there, and there's two girls just literally sitting right next to each other, still texting each other on their phones, and he's trying to catch their interest, and one of them is just like, man, I don't, like, seems kind of pointless nowadays. Didn't T-Rexes have, like, tiny brains? Ha 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 ha. And he's just sitting there like, oh, now that these fake dinosaurs are real and alive, nobody cares about the actual science and research I'm doing anymore.
They do that in Jurassic Park 3 as well, and like that could have been what they told the story about, and that would have been interesting, but they didn't.
Nope.
Yeah, I suppose we can probably leave that there, though. It's an interesting mixed bag, the Jurassic Park franchise. There's a lot of really good stuff there in the sequels and spin-offs, but there's also just some stuff that I just like. It's such a shameless, hollow money grab that it sours the overall perception of an otherwise fantastic series of stories, and that does make me a little bit sad.
Yeah, the Jurassic series gives us the rare case of, like, there's something for every single spot on the quality spectrum here.
Yeah, you kind of got, the peak of the original, and then a little bit lower than that, you've got your Lost World, Camp Cretaceous. You've got your middle ground where you've got World kind of sitting by itself, and also some of the video games. And then a little bit lower than that, I guess, Dominion, not Dominion, Fallen Kingdom, and then everything else.
And then it only gets worse from there. And Dominion is Rise of Skywalker levels of bad.
Ooh, because like you could make I mean, it's a little subjective, but you could make a linear graph of quality for Jurassic Park media, which is sad.
Yeah, it's literally just a direct diagonal line down, except The third one is so much worse. Even I almost feel like the line goes from diagonal to straight down, right?
Oh, I mean, I wasn't talking about it necessarily like in chronological order. Then it would be a little bit different because it would be like, okay, we got a slight decline from 1 to 2. Anyway, 3 is at literal 0, and then back up to world is kind of like mid-range, and then we start our linear decline again.
Yeah, no, I meant the second trilogy. The second trilogy is literally just a downward line. Like, sad.
But yes, if you guys are listening to this over on Spotify or YouTube or wherever else it shows up, you could also find these episodes on my website, radfordwrites.com. You can also read various stories and articles and things like that I post there, as well as buy my books there, including Marble, my most recently released book, which is also our topic for next week. And you could also subscribe to my premium service there if you would like to be able to read my books cheaper, because that's how that works. And you can also find John streaming on YouTube and Twitch as Sepia, Separ, as well as doing work on various other projects. And we'll leave you with a reminder that just because you can do something does not mean you should do it.
Words to live by.
On the
If
island
only
we're headed
people
to,
did. Goodbye.
24 species have survived there alone.
The theme park owners did experimental work, leaving only the worst ones here.